Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed your Sunday lunch. And now it's time for a nap. I'll be out there giving you a bit of a prod, waking you up. Before we kick off, you may have read in the horizon that if you have any if you've got any Papua New Guinea money you don't want to leave in a drawer at home, or you're not collecting for the grandkids, or if you've got any Australian coins you want to get rid of, and there's a wee hat down here, and you can pop it in here. Aye, and we also take Scottish pound notes as well. Thank you very much indeed, ladies. But all this money that's being collected here is going to be changed or converted into Papua New Guinea kina, and the next time we go into Alito, we'll be putting it into a bank account for the Royal Papua New Guinea Constabulary Legacy Fund, which will go towards paying for the school fees for the children of police officers that are killed on duty. And if Beth and Malcolm are here, thank you very, very much indeed. Your contribution that you gave us the other day is probably going to take at least pay for 3 primary school children for a year. So thank you very, very much indeed for that really great contribution. Otherwise, if the hat's there, beside the hat are a couple of little card things that normally are given to for the crew for exemplary service and all the rest of it. But we've just purloined a couple, and there's more available at reception. If you've got any comments at all that you'd like to make about the presentations, good, bad, or indifferent, the cruise lines don't take any notice of gossip, and they would rather have things written down. So if you want to make any notes about our presentations, or they're too many or too little or whatever, or they could be done on other cruises in the Atlantic or the Pacific or wherever, please make a note, and that'll help hopefully improve the process for you world travellers. My final presentation, and then I can have a wee rest. Again, like this morning, don't forget to plug the thing in. Like this morning, please be aware that there's some images that you might see on here that might be a little bit confronting, to say the least. When you were in Alito, or some of you would have gone to the Sing Sing and the cultural centre in Alito, and if you'd been along and you saw Morag's presentation, you might remember this particular headdress of this Sing Sing here. On the left-hand image here, this whole contraption that this gentleman is wearing, it's about 20 foot tall, and it's as light as a feather. Well, it's about 3 million feathers, I think. And in this particular area is in the north west of Madang, and they do these carvings. On the right-hand image, you can see a wooden carving, but all the rest of the material there is made up of shells, feathers, bits of foliage. There's some dog's teeth in there, and obviously different kind of bird's feathers. Here's another one, a different mask on the left and one on the right, 2 different headdresses. And these headdresses are housed in the men's house. The women aren't allowed to go in and be involved with this decoration. It's all secret men's business. When we went out to this particular village for the Sing Sing, it was our very first thing that we got involved in, and it turned out to be like a harvest festival. In the back there was one hut, and it was just full of bananas and sago and taro and all of good food, and this was the spirit coming into the village to provide for the next year. And as you can see, there's a couple of ladies lying prostrate on the ground there, and this spirit man leaps over the top of them to bring good luck to the village. Whilst all this is going on, in the men's house, there are these two guys blowing on bamboo flutes. And it's just a piece of bamboo hollowed out the middle, small hole, and they move their fingers to change the pitch and tone. And that went. Those two guys, they could quite easily have hyperventilated because they just blew and blew and blew. For about 2.5 hours they were blowing in those flutes. But a little further down the coast, the premise of this particular presentation is to show that with intermarriage between tribes and villages, because there are 850 different languages and cultures in Papua New Guinea, when a woman married from one tribe to another tribe, she tended to take with her a little bit of the culture from her home tribe, and it sort of mixed in with the tribe she was going to. So it will show you how various uses of headdress and the like moved through the various tribes. In this particular area in Bogia, and this tribe didn't have the wooden face mask, but they all used the dog's teeth. On the right-hand image here across the forehead, they're all dog's teeth across the top of there. And the face mask is covered with what they call pisias. Pisias is a tiny little cowrie shell. And what they do is they cut off a branch of a tree, fairly decent-sized branch of a tree, tie a big weight to it, and they tow it out to the decks just on the beach and drop it in the water, and it sinks. And instantly, these little shellfish that are swimming around looking for a home think, oh, a new reef. And they attach themselves to the tree, the leaves, and they set up home there. After about 3 or 4 months, the locals go out in the canoe, dive over the side, cut the bit of rope that's holding the weight at the anchor onto the bottom of the branch. It floats to the surface, they drag it to shore, and then they catch all of these tiny little shells. And they put them in a big pot, and they boil them up, and they put sweet potato and taro in there and have a yummy soup, and then they keep all the little shells. The shells that are broken and damaged, they then put in the fire and roast those, and then they crush them up, and that provides the lime for the betel nut. So when they're chewing the betel nut, they've got lime, a pepper, and the betel nut, and that's what they get. And in the past, it used to be only the men that chewed the betel nut because it was part of ceremony and part of sitting around, and just like the boys going down the pub for a beer, the guys would actually get in and they would chew betel nut. Nowadays, unfortunately, betel nut is being chewed by all the kids and the women as well. But that's just an image of the particular Sing Sing further down the coast. Moving on, this particular Sing Sing here, again, it's the use of dog's teeth, and these are all women, by the way. Dog's teeth for the head, and then down the front here, you see this lady here. It's like a breastplate, which is reproduced here. They're all dog's teeth. Now, you wonder, must be an awful lot of dogs running around gumming people to death. No, these dog's teeth have actually come from the highlands of Papua New Guinea. You know that the kina shell that Morag talked about? Well, obviously they don't grow in the mountains, and so they collect them from the reefs, and because there's so many of them, they're not really valuable to the coastal people. They eat the meat that's inside and then throw the shells away. But what happened was they trade those shells up into the mountains, and in the mountains there's a very large population in the mountains, and they've got lots of dogs up there hunting for pigs and cassowaries and possums and the like. And so when the dogs die, they extract the teeth and send the teeth down to the coast. So this is all part of the trade between the mountains and the coast. yesterday, was it yesterday? I think yesterday, I mentioned about the being able to tell the status of a particular person just on the way that they dress. And this skirt on the right-hand side has been cut in such a way that it actually shows that this particular woman has got 4 children because of the layers that are there. If there were just 2 layers there, it would mean that she was a single girl, which meant any young man that was looking on to say, oh, I know who to talk to. But traditionally, they would do other dances, and this particular dance is, again, it's from the coast. It's down from nearer where we were in Sidor. And a lot of you might have seen various David Attenborough shows or whatever, wildlife shows on barrier reefs and turtles and things like that. When a male and a female turtle get together, they stay together for a considerable amount of time. The male has got to continually fight off the other males who are trying to disconnect him from the female. But when you think about it, the number of eggs that a female turtle lays to actually provide the necessary to the female turtle to fertilize all those eggs, they really do have to stay attached for quite some time. It's a very, very dangerous time for turtles, because that's the time when the locals actually see them in the sea, and they paddle out in their canoes, and they're a lot more efficient at extracting the male or from the female, and they take them back to land and make turtle soup. I was there when we went on to Long Island on a patrol, and they caught a couple of turtles, both male and female. They heaved them both out of the water, and I went back onto the mainland when they were cooking up or preparing the female turtle for cooking, and they cut the chest carapace away from the turtle, and it was amazing just looking at the internal organs of a turtle, and you could see one section was just basically all yolk, and then there was this white mass here, and it basically all came together and it moved through the system until it actually produced eggs at the other end. The reproductory factory within a turtle is just amazing. The yolk made really, really nice scrambled eggs. Here we have an image of the people on the coast. Now, basically, the different dances or sing-sings from different villages, but you can see there's a similarity between the headdresses of some of the tribes. Some are longer headpieces, some have got long sort of small poles that stick out the top, but they're generally made from cockatoo and chicken feathers. These 2 guys here are teachers from Rabaul, and they were there and they dressed up in their traditional gear, and they've got a wooden face mask. And these people are from hundreds of miles away from this coastal area, but you can still see they had that stick, decorated stick with feathers coming off the top of their heads, as these ones do. And they're so far away between the 2, you can see how the dress, the decoration is being transferred over time between one place and the next. Now, these people are right down on the coast. These people here are up in the highlands. They're from where we were. They would be a 4 or 5 day walk away, and you can see how those headdresses have gotten bigger and bigger, and in some instances these headgear with the decorated sticks has gotten bigger and bigger. And in this particular instance, the women they don't get dressed up as much as the men do, and the women are just basically have got stripped off fronds from palm trees that decorate them. But this is this particular time here. You see the ladies are not all that well. There's yours truly. This was in 1973 when we were up in celebrating what was called Self-Government Day. But now you can see those headdresses have changed again. They've shortened and lengthened up vertically. So all these tribes were from different areas. Remember, when we flew up the Yupna Gorge, you saw those houses, those villages on the tops of ridges. That's where these people are from. Again, totally different side. These men here have got these really deep bass kundu drums. I was standing taking that video footage of them, and as they danced past, the ground actually shook as they thumped down into the ground. It was quite interesting. I'm now standing on top of the health centre, taking a view of all the different dance groups that came in. When we were there was one dance that was done that happened at night time, and it's just unfortunate, A, I didn't have a digital video camera, but B, I couldn't have filmed it anyway because it was pitch black, and their gear comes along any second now. But this tapa cloths that they were wearing, we've got one of those at home. So these great long poles are about 20 feet long. They're attached to those umbrella type structures made with black cockatoo feathers, and then they're attached to a harness which is worn over the shoulders. Now these guys, they only dance at night time, and as they dance they move their heads back and forth, and these great long poles make a real swishing noise as they dance. And they just came out of the jungle at night. Nobody knew where they were, that they prepared. And as they came into this clearing where everybody was waiting, it was just in the pitch black, all you could hear was this swish, swish, swish as this lot came in. I was reading the Papua New Guinea papers about 3 months ago, and that particular dance is the first time that they've actually performed it in daylight hours. So that's 45 years it's taken them to actually say, well, we'll show people what our culture is. Otherwise, previously, you had to be up there in the dark. On the coast, because they need a lot of labour for the coconut plantations and the cocoa plantations, they actually brought the highlanders down from the coast. And whenever there was a festival on, the highlanders came out to sing and dance. And basically their dance was just marching. And it might not sound overly impressive, but when you've got, this is just a small group here, when you've got 500 or 600 of these guys, all with drums and long spears, and they're all chanting, and they're all marching towards you, you know that they're there. One of the very, very early patrols that went into the area in the highlands, they were trying to organise an airdrop. And what they did was they talked to the various tribes about the place and decided to have a bit of a party. Said, we'll throw a party, but we want to throw this party on this big flat piece of land here that was just covered with grass. How would you like to do your dance there? And they said, oh yeah, that's all right, we'll give you some salt and other bits and pieces to do your dance. So they got 5 or 6 tribes together. So they're talking about 2,500 or 3,000 of these warriors on this flat piece of area. All it was grass. So they marched them up and down, tramping down this grass. And they said, oh, thanks very much indeed, and here's the salt and everything, we'll pay for that. Great time. And then they got on the radio and they said, Port Moresby, we've now got an airstrip. You can send the plane in. And they flew in an old 3-engine Junkers and resupplied the patrol. But this is the way that these guys march. All of these, you see the way they're stomping with the spears. You can imagine hundreds of these guys marching towards you. And they're from the Mount Hagen area. Where we were in Tari, these are the famous Hoolywig men. Now, anything to do with Papua New Guinea, you will always see the yellow face painted, and you'll see the wig and the birds of paradise feathers. Now, all of these wigs are their own hair, I'll need to go and get another one when I go back next time. But they collect all their hair up. In fact, part of the initiation, I'll talk a bit more about it later on, but they actually collect their hair, and that's why Sangoma doesn't work here, because everybody's got hair. So there's no point in worrying about trying to pinch somebody's hair. But you can see on the left-hand side, the far left, there's two wigs. One is black, the furthest is black, and the next one is red. Now, the black wigs are generally the leaders or the dance leaders, and there's a black wig in the front here and then a red wig. So these two guys at the front are basically the leaders of that particular dance, and they are also initiates into the European equivalent would be the Freemasons. So these two guys in the front are Freemasons and all the rest are ordinary Joes, but everybody progresses to try and get a black wig. In the wig here, this big black wig in the front here, you can see, just a quick explanation, all these feathers around the bottom here are lorikeet feathers. This is a sugar glider tail. This is a ribbon tail bird of paradise. We've got everlasting daisies here. This is a snake skin across the forehead. We've got the superb bird of paradise. I'll show you more about that a little later. And these are kina shells. And round their necks also they've got something that looks like a piece of wire, but it's actually the quill from a cassowary. And they get these quills from the cassowaries. Because the quill is hollow, they can push one into the other, and then they bend them round very gently until they form a necklace. But the birds of paradise feathers are very prominent. When Morag and I went back up in 2007, generally when the hoolies get together, you might find maybe maximum of 12 dancers would actually be there to perform for a celebration. This was the group of dancers that came to perform for us and to welcome us back to this particular area. So we felt particularly proud that all these guys had gone to all this trouble to see us. But this is the sort of dance that they do. There's some young guys in training here. You can see the little boys without a wig. They haven't been initiated, but they're in training. You see them up the back there. And they're being taught and trained by this guy with the black wig. That's a sulphur-crested cockatoo comb that's going through the nose of the guy there. But they beat the drums, they bounce up and down, and the relevance of that will become evident very shortly. But their kundu drums are very small kundu drums and are high pitch kundu. All of those leaves and things that you see at the back there, that's called arse grass. And when we lived on the coast, the men would wear a belt and wear a kind of sporran or piece of material that just hang down the front. And they'd walk past our house in Sidor, and you'd see the bushes rustling, and you'd hear cracking, and these guys are ripping big chunks of foliage off our garden as they walk past. And then by the time they get to the end of the fence, they're adjusting their dress, and they throw away yesterday's trousers and they put on today's. But in this area that the hoolies were in, there's this group of men, and they're the same language group, but culturally, from a dance point of view, it's different again. They've got much longer kundu drums. Their wigs are made mainly of cassowary feathers, not hair, and they dress almost like women with grass skirts. And I've shown these images to people from this area. This is at Paijaka, and this is gone. These two men that were doing the dancing, when they passed away, end of story. No more of this particular dance and songs appeared. The youngsters weren't interested. But in this, just again, right next door to those people, we had these people here with the big buffalo horn type headdress. And there's the men dancing. There, as you can see, these headdresses here, they had things like bits of Coca-Cola can and other bits and pieces in there to decorate them. Fortunately, there weren't any big golden M's in their headdresses, not yet anyway. But the Australians that are in the audience would probably know what the Torres Strait Islander flag looks like. It's got a headdress made of feathers. And this particular, and the headdress is similar to the one that's on the top of this crocodile here. It's made of white cockatoo feathers. These people are from Daru. These people are Australia's closest next door neighbours. They're only 4 kilometres away from Saibai Island, which is a part of Australia's territory. And they were dancing here on this particular day. It's a crocodile dance that they were doing. And if you look at the headdresses of the men, you'll see that they're very much like the headdresses of the Torres Strait Island. And they were warders, teachers, aid post orderlies, nurses and the like that were actually living in that area. These ladies here are from the Chimbu, and they're all black cockatoo feathers that they wear. And their Chimbu ladies are renowned for their sexual prowess, I think you probably call it. And these two guys here, they've got those same wigs as the other ones, hair wigs, but they're red. They don't wear black wigs in this particular area, but you can see the way they're dancing alongside the guy with the white wig, the white feathers. Now that white headdress and those white feathers is very similar to the people from Daru, but he comes from about 300 miles inland. And I'll talk a little bit more about him a little later on. But every time they had a celebration or a sing-sing, there's a young girl dancing. This is the typical dance that they would do. They might have half a dozen. They would always have a spirit man come in, and he'd dress up, and his job was to frighten the kids, basically. And here's some more dancing, the huli dancing. And the way they dance becomes more and more relevant as we move along. This is a typical Ragiana bird of paradise. Yellow faces on the dancers, the yellow head of the bird. The plumes there. And as I said, if you come to the very first presentation about how the bird of paradise got its name, here you can see the tail feathers of the bird of paradise, and you can see its legs, and just underneath that plumage are the wings, 2 wings. So when they were caught and processed by the traders, the skin traders, they take the legs off, take all the feathers off, take the wings off, and that's what was traded. And obviously, when that got back to Europe in 1522, the Europeans were saying, well, where's the leg? How does it actually stand up? How does it fly? There's no wings. Oh, this bird must live in paradise. And that's how the bird of paradise got its name, because the bird never touched ground, didn't need wings to fly. It just floated through on these luxurious feathers. And they didn't say what it ate, but that was the interpretation of how it became called the bird of paradise. One of the jobs that I said that we had to do was road building, bridge building, maintenance and the like. So I was out camped in this valley doing road maintenance contracts, supervising the maintenance of this road. Now, it would have been probably 10 years on from when this photograph was taken that the first vehicle actually drove down that road. I used to go down on a motorbike, but there was no bridges to get the cars across the roads, but there were small bridges that I could take a motorbike along. And just where this gentleman on the far left-hand side in the foreground is, my little patrol officer's house was there. And this particular patrol, I took my camera along with me, and I'm just sitting in the morning having had breakfast, probably about 6:45ish, and I could hear these birds of paradise. You can hear them from miles away, tweeting away in the trees. And this particular bird was very, very loud. And I turned round, and there it was, perched on the tree behind me. So I ducked into the house, and I grabbed my camera, and I say it's a Super 8 video camera, and that was the only moving footage that I got of a bird of paradise. However, I followed it, and this display tree, the birds of paradise, they go into these big display trees. You can see there's hardly any leaves on the outside there, and that's why if you'll see flashes of red here, there's one here, you'll see some come up in here, and all the birds, the male birds, come fluttering in. There's one up here. You see a little bit of yellow and this red here. And they come in and they display in that area. You see the movement now? And what they're doing is saying to all the females, hey, look at me, don't I look good? Come down and see me. And the females then, they'll go in and they'll pick the male that they want. You'll see over here on the far left-hand side, there's one comes in from there and joins in. Now, always all the men, there's still down here. Here he is. And they're all competing against each other for the females. And they make a noise that is very reminiscent to the noise that the huli men make when they're dancing. If you recall the Can We Help program that I showed early on, when I was dancing with them, they were making a noise that went woot, 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 woot. That's very much like the bird of paradise, the noise they make. And here we are, a bit closer look at the wig. So in this particular one, as I say, we've got the lorikeet feathers around here. This is a bit of possum fur. They've got white cockatoo feathers. There's bird of paradise here, bird of paradise there. Oh, sorry, there's the lesser bird of paradise and the Ragiana bird of paradise. That's the ribbon-tailed bird of paradise, the white one there. Those two black ones are from the sickle-billed bird of paradise. And here we've got the ribbon-tailed in the top picture. The middle picture is the lesser bird of paradise. Now, when we went to Alito, that's where these birds come from, down on the coast there. So you can see that they've been traded an awful long way. This area where these guys are dancing is probably 800 or 900 miles inland up the backbone of Papua New Guinea. And down here, this is the superb bird of paradise. You'll see a little bit more about him a little later on. But they've got King of Saxony birds of paradise in there as well. Now, this is the King of Saxony. Now, he is there on a branch, and he's got these really, really long feathers that come out from the back of the skull. That's the female. She's having a look at him. The dancing that they were doing, you can see the dancing that the bird's doing, bouncing up and down, and then he's also singing, and then just watch these quills that come out of the back of the head. He's dancing away, and gets very, very excited, and then all of a sudden he needs to show off to the female, and very shortly, after he's worked himself into a lather, whoop, up they go. And that's him showing the female how long and strong these particular feathers are. And this is what the female's looking for. She's up there keeping an eye on him. Oh, yes, you'll do. So there you go. He's just showing off there. And these are coming straight out the top of the head of the bird. They're not part of a wing or anything like that. The ribbon-tailed bird of paradise, they have a bit of a problem, in as much as these tail feather type things that are coming from them, and they can't dance up and down on branches and throw themselves in the air. But what they do is they have two display trees, a to and a from display tree. This is the female. She's finding grubs underneath the bark. He knows that she's there, and he's picked these trees out, and his job is to fly from one tree across to the other display tree, and he sits in that one. He's displaying his feathers as he goes across, and he'll land, and then he'll just sit there, and where she was eating the insects from that particular tree, that's sort of in the middle of the two trees that he's there. So he knows that she's there having a feed, and he'll fly back and forth between those other two trees saying, hey, look at me, don't I look great? Now, on the wig, you saw the big black feathers, the big sickle bill feathers. This guy here is quite amazing. He finds a cleared area in the jungle and a tree that's been cut down, and the tree might be cut off here. You can see where it's cut or broken, but it's nice and clear there. There's no obstructions. Those things that you see on either side is a ruffle at the back of the neck. It's not wings. The wings are all there, and this is him bouncing up and down. The yellow there is actually the inside of his mouth. He's got his mouth open, and it's the gullet of the bird is yellow. So I'll play that one again. You see the ruffles come up at the back of the neck, and inside the mouth is the yellow, and the blue, you see the blue on the head, iridescent blue on the head, and that goes right through to the tips of those ruffles. So when he actually flips over on his side, you can see he makes this hooded area, and he's just standing on the top of that, and he just bounces up and down. And that's the sickle bill bird of paradise. And again, the lesser bird of paradise is a bit like the Ragiana, but again we've got the yellow head, and the down on the coast again the tree is cleared a lot of foliage, which that's a female in the background there, and there's all the guys there saying, hey, look at me, do you fancy me or what? So it's all to do with the genes and the gene pool of the bird of paradise. That's not to say that the hoolies, when they're doing their dancing, are saying to the women, hey, look at me, because they don't just duck off and do what the birds do. They actually go back and have a feed. But this is one of the most peculiar of the birds. This is the superb bird of paradise. Now, we've got an iridescent blue bow tie that's across the chest, and there's a big ruffle at the back of the neck. And the guy that's holding this is my interpreter. That's an interpreter's uniform. And I did this deliberately took this footage to show the wings of these birds and how big the bird was, because you see a lot of things on television, you've got no real comprehension of the size of the bird. But he's just pushing the wings out so you can actually see where the wings are, and that the ruffle and the bow tie are not part of the wings of the bird. But this is what the superb bird of paradise does. This bit's R-rated, by the way. As you can see, gets his bow tie out, flips his ruffle up, and then he starts dancing, just like the hoolies are dancing, bouncing up and down, bounce, bounce, bounce. There's the female there. She's kind of interested because she hasn't flown away. Checking me out. Yep. What do you reckon? Everything good? Oh, yeah, I think so. Come back to my place? No, why worry? Why waste time? And Bob's your uncle, procreation. So that's the superb bird of paradise. And on every hoolie wig, you see that the bird's feathers there. So as you can see over here, in this group of dancers on their backs, on the top picture here, that's a hornbill, a bit like the Guinness bird, but not quite as big as that one, and that's a hornbill. And on either side there are pig's tusks. Now the pig's tusks aren't complete pig's tusks. They're a pig's tusk that's been split in half, so that the two halves make either side of the decoration. In the belt of every hoolie they carry a cassowary-borne dagger. And one of our jobs in all areas was to convince all of the men to not carry offensive weapons. So part of the dress and the initiation and everything of a holy man was to have this dagger, and consequently to take the dagger off them would have been a big insult. So what we did was say, okay, you can have the dagger, but we've got to make the dagger as impotent as possible, blunt off the end. So they had these really pointy daggers that quite easily kill you, but we convinced them to make the ends rounded. So when they tried to stab anybody, they'd have no hope of actually penetrating the skin. But at the same time, you've got to remember, this is a femur of a cassowary, big bird, and they'd split the bone in half to make it into a knife. And up at this end here, the top end, the joint end here, they'd actually cut it back further to here, and because they had no pockets, they used to roll up their notes and push them up inside that dagger to carry the notes around. But as you can see down the bottom there's all the lorikeet feathers and cockatoo feathers and the like. But this is what was the centerpiece of the wig. Was the sugar glider. The whole body and tail was what they would put up in the top of the wig. And here are the wig men in 2007 when we went up. And as you can see, these are just day wigs. There's none of those wigs that you see there as ceremonial dancing wigs. These are just the wigs that they would wear on an ordinary day out. Now this guy here on the far right-hand side, and 4 in, he's got a similar wig. So those two men are from roughly the same geographic area. This guy here, his wig is round, more like a mushroom, whereas this guy here and this bloke here, it's very similar wigs. But they would still have birds of paradise or cassowary feathers or whatever in the wigs. Now this guy sitting down talking to me is Hogogo, and this is him with his traditional wig on. See, he was a big man in the area. He's probably the, I don't know what the top guy in the Freemasons is, but that's what he would have been. There's this soft-crested cockatoo comb. There's through his nose. And there's the superb bird of paradise bow tie. And just up behind is the ruffle, the black one. More feathers there. And obviously with the yellow paint. But round his neck, which you can't see, his beard's covering up, were these necklaces made of cowrie shells. Very significant to wear those. Here we go back again to the Kokomo bill and the pig's teeth, a closer look at that. But what would happen with the young men is that they would go off to be initiated, and they would go through a process that I'm going to describe now. But after they'd gone through this process, they would go out into the jungle, and they would just live with their teachers. And the teacher would be teaching them not only the facts of life, but would also be teaching them about gardening, would teach them the history of the place, the songs, the language, and everything else, and actually and go through this whole initiation process. And the initiation process included making their own wig. And it might take about 18 months or so to actually complete this process. But what they would do is they would make something a bit like a hairnet, and they would put it on, and then they would go off, and then the hair would grow and grow and grow. And then eventually they would cut the hair off underneath this hairnet, and that would form the base for the rest of the hair. And then they would grow hair, and they would just add it in. Because it's tight, curly hair, they could just add the hair anywhere into this wig, and it would stay in place. But this is our son Craig, and on the back left here is Morag, and this is our house girl. She used to take Craig off, look after him really well. And this little archway thing here is what is called the starting point. And this is where all the initiates would gather at this little archway. This particular area here was, they tried to build what we call a living museum. And this was here to part of very, very early tourism in this area. Never survived because they had a few other problems. But they had this little museum that they built. And this was the entrance for the initiates. So they went through that little gate thing there, and they all went to the right-hand side here, to the lowest end of this building. Very low. That height there was only maybe a metre off the ground. And this is what it looked like from the front. So you can imagine that's way down low at the back there, bigger door at the front. So this is very reminiscent of a child being born. This was the process of the child becoming a man. And they would go down to that narrow end there, and to go in to this hut, the temporary hut that was built, they would have to bend down to go through the doorway. Inside the hut, either side of it, the men were there with stinging nettles, with thorn switches and all the rest of it. And the boys had to go in the end and come out the front. And the quicker they did it, the less it hurt. But they would just get whipped and whipped and whipped as they came out the other end there. When they came out, they were all cut and bleeding and everything else and sore. And then immediately they were taken away by the older men, and they were taken into the bush. And the mums, nobody saw them for another 18 months. They would be out getting their training. One of the aspects of Papua New Guinea is scarification in skin body decoration. And these are the chest scarification of a woman that yesterday you might have seen the full image of her yesterday. But this particular area, we're back to the Basavi where the three guys who were cannibals. This is a different house, a different area. But again, this house is huge. Now, just to give you an idea of the size of it, I had a look at the pool there and the Lido deck, and actually the width of the ship and the depth of the Lido deck, that's roughly the internal dimensions of this hut. Right down the centre were the very large trees that in some cases they actually plant the trees deliberately, and they go away for 15 or 20 years, and these trees have grown up, and that becomes the basis for a new house. They plan that far in front. So they've got these very tall trees in there, and the roof is attached and goes down. So they've got a centre aisle in the building, and either side of the aisle is maybe 1.5 metres, 2 metres. Either side of that is a nice big open walkway through. And then to the right of that, there's a raised platform. It would be maybe 30, 35, 40 centimetres high. And this was the sleeping platform that the men would sleep on. It's in the centre of the house. It's only the men slept in the centre of the house. So this raised platform, there would be enough room for two men to sleep side by side. And then there was it wasn't a fire pit, it was a cradle that they built like the houses in the other area. They build this cradle, sink it into the floor, put rocks in, put clay on the top, and then light the fire on top of the clay. And as long as the fire stayed on the clay, it didn't burn the house down. But the heat would go through the clay into the rocks, and then it would keep them warm during the night. So you had fire pit, 2 men, fire pit, 2 men, all the way down both sides. Now, on the outside of them was like a bamboo wall all the way down the length of the house, and on the other side of the bamboo wall were the women and the children. And they lived, say, right down here on the outside, so when they climb this log to get onto this platform here, they would walk round the side, and they would go into where they lived. So that's the structure of the inside of the house and how it worked. Very rarely did they actually have sing-sings or dances outside. These two guys went off and got dressed. I asked them if they wouldn't mind getting dressed because I wanted to video their sing-sing. And you can see the headdresses again, very similar to those ones from the Torres Strait Islands and down in Daru. But again, this is 300-400 miles inland. And they dance sideways because they normally dance inside the house. This is just a dance that they did for me. I couldn't take a picture of them inside the house because it was too dark. So that's the way that they danced inside the house. And this is roughly what this is what they look like. They've got that white headdress there. They've got the kundu drum, this tail sticking out. You can see this bent area comes from the back right across to the top left-hand side of the image. On that, there's got a whole pile of freshwater crayfish claws have been fitted to that. So when they dance back and forth, this thing rattles and makes the noise along with the drum. Now, Papua New Guinea, it's only been independent for 42 years or whatever. European involvement has only been for the last 100 years. These people are fundamentally animists. In other words, they believe in the spirit of the bamboo grove, the spirit of the stream, the spirit of the sago palm, the spirit of this, that, and the next thing. Very similar to Hindus. They've got all these different gods that look after different things. Well, Papua New Guineans are generally animists, so they believe in all of these things. They're very, very strong conservationists. They really know how to manage their land and make sure they don't abuse it. So these guys, when they're doing their dancing inside the house, especially the initiates, the young men growing up, they sing about their environment. They play their drums, and they've been taught the songs by the older men, and they dance up and down inside the house, singing and dancing. Now, in this particular area, I explained before about the dog's teeth coming from the highlands down to the coast and the shells going up to the highlands. In this particular area, they have a very, very valuable oil that they trade. But this oil is a sap of a tree, very, very runny, just a bit like rubber. You cut the bark of the tree and this stuff comes out. So what they do in this area, they make cones out of leaves and they attach them to the tree, and this cone will fill up with this liquid sap. Over time, this sap solidifies and it becomes a bit like toffee. It's still malleable, but it's not rock hard like rosin from a pine tree, for example. It's got quite malleable. So this stuff solidifies in here, and it has two purposes then. One is they can light the end of the torch and provide the end of the rosin, and they can provide it like a torch. They can walk through the jungle at night time. They can put it in the house and light the inside of that great big house. Otherwise, they trade it up into the highlands, and they heat it up and they melt it down to an oil. And those hoolies that you saw dancing with shiny skin, that's the oil that they've put on their bodies to make their bodies. Not pig grease, it's not pig fat, it's the oil from this particular tree. So when they're doing the dancing inside the house, they're dancing up and down, and the mums are inside the house standing on these platforms, and they'll have a couple of lit torches to light the inside of the house. All the boys are dancing up and down and up and down, and they get more and more and more agitated, and they get into a little bit of a trance as they're dancing up and down. And as they do that, as I say, they're singing about the trees, all the lovely things of life. They spot their mothers, and they dance towards their mothers. Their mothers have got these two lit torches in their hands, and they move towards their mothers as close as possible, and with these lit torches, the mothers go whack. And they put the torches out onto the shoulders of the boys. And these end up with keloid scars here. This is all scarring from having their shoulders burnt from these torches. That wakens them up immediately, and they say, oh, golly gosh, what was that? And then they get back to beating the drums and singing and everything else. What does Mum do? She turns round to the fire, lights both the torches, and stands there again until the next time the boy comes running forward. So that goes on all night, and eventually everybody has done their thing, and in the daytime they dress all the sores, but the idea is to get as many scars as possible on the shoulders, and that shows that you're initiated through that whole process. But this will give you an idea of the size of the house. On the right-hand image, there's an aerial shot of the house, and this one down here is my patrol officer's house there, and that's an average 3-bedroom size. This one here, and I'll give you an idea of how big that particular house is. But in the Sepik River, they take scarification to an art form. This is a young lad here, he's being initiated, and they've covered him with clay, and what they do is they use razor blades, they used to use bamboo and the like, and they actually score the skin in the shape of the back of a crocodile. And because the body is normally covered with a clay, these scars that get impregnated with the clay, and as a result of that, they end up with the scarification. All these keloid scars are on their body. This young lad here, you can see the clay's dried on his head, and the white on his body, that's all of those little cuts that have been made by the razor blade or the bamboo, has actually got some clay in it. And then over time, they heal over. But these two initiates here, they've had their chest done, their backs done. You can see the clay there. You can see the perspiration on the guy on the right as he's been initiated. But this is what it looks like when it's finished. And these particular young men are from the Sepik area. They're very, very proud of all this scarification that's done on them as part of their initiation ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, earlier on I mentioned about finally getting some recognition from the Australian government for the work we did as the 10% work I did anyway as a policeman. And what we do as patrol officers in Papua New Guinea is we amongst ourselves, we collect money together and we take it up. I go, every time I go into Alito, I go into the bank there, and whatever money I've collected from my colleagues, I deposit into the Royal Papua New Guinea Constabulary Legacy Fund. When I'm on ships going up and down, I ask the passengers if they've got any kina or toya left over from the visit to Papua New Guinea, and they're just going to throw it into a drawer and forget about it. Well, they can put it into this hat that I've got at the front here. It's a policeman's hat. And the next time I go to Alito, I'll deposit it into the fund there. Today, a couple of gentlemen came along and said, oh, we got a whole bunch of Australian shrapnel, and they threw all the coins in the hat. So I'm quite happy to take Australian coins as well. And there's a couple of friends of ours that we've made on the ship. They even threw a £5 Scottish £5 note in there, which will go down just as well. So if you have any spare change, rest assured it is going to go to the right place. And Beth and Malcolm, thank you very, very much indeed. Your contribution that you've made is going to pay the school fees for 3 kids for a year. That was a most significant donation that anybody's ever made at any of these presentations. Finally, I'd like to say thank you to the production team. Somebody waving up there, yes, that's Alex and Andy and all the others in the production team, both here and in the Globe, and Mark and Scott and Ross in the entertainment team. thank you very, very much indeed. Morag and I are really delighted. Scott, really delighted with the reception that we've had here on the ship, and we're very pleased to have made the presentations. As I say, if you want to make any comment, feel free, and we get to hear about it, hopefully. Thank you very, very much indeed. That's from Morag as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together one more time for some fantastic talks from John and Morag. Thank you very much. Thank you. And also thank you very much for the extra talk that you did for us at the beginning. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have any shrapnel, as John was saying, if you'd like to come and donate down at the bottom, it all goes to a fantastic cause. But one more time, ladies and gentlemen, John and Morag. Thank you.